Smiles and blessings, everybody. Back again. It's your boy, Big Dave Martell. Here, we got a special episode here going on tonight. But like always, I'm going to remind you guys, go over to thebizarchives.com and get yourself some books. Remember I told you guys that we're getting the store set up. We're going to be doing all of our own shipping and fulfillment, all of our stuff. You'll be able to buy it right from the website. Well, your boy, Big Dave, got that set up already today. It's not up on the site quite yet, but it will be available for you guys. Every day, every month, we're inching towards independence, towards anti-fragility, towards fulfilling our destiny is where we're going. So give us some support, help us out, and just buy some great books that I know you guys are going to love over there at thebizarchives.com. Follow the links over there to Amazon, Books A Million, or whatever your local retailer is, and get yourself a copy. Got so much great stuff. Bizarchives 1, 2, 3. We got The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. Man in the 25th Century, which is the first 2 Buck Rogers novellas. We got the Epic Fantasy Series, Book 1, Chronicles of Heraldry, Sacred Times, Part 1. We got the Molybdenus Articulate. We got the Cosmic Horror double feature. We got so much great stuff over there, so make sure you go get yourself some books. We have a sale right now going on. 2 days left. 2 days left. All books, $10 and under. Go get yourself a copy over at thebizarchives.com. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarchives. If you like this podcast, make sure you go check out on Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Me, Shane Hawks, from The Bizarchives, author of Baby Teeth and the Molybdenus Articulate. We team up live here together in studio to give you guys the Bizarre Cast. If you like the Bizarre Cast, make sure to go to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go check out Culture Dads, where me and Mike, 2 based publishing dads from the indie sphere, get together and do deep dives into retro pop culture for folkish and dissident minds. That is Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. And that is it for my plugs. But today I have a really great guest tonight. He's been on already. He is my buddy, fellow paisan, East Coast guy, pulp writer, gothic horror writer, Mr. Matt Pungitore, and he's here to discuss his philosophy of Neo-Decadence, and we're going to have a little bit of a debate / discussion of his philosophy of Neo-Decadence versus my philosophy of hyper-romanticism, or I guess I should say our philosophy at this point of hyper-romanticism, because it's really exciting times to be in these kind of underground art spheres, these literary spheres, these spheres in general that are creating this creative stuff, this imaginative stuff, I should say, because there's so many new ideas and philosophies and stuff floating, different substratas of people talking about the books and talking about the literature, talking about this and that. It's just an awesome time to be in this. We have a great opportunity ahead of us, and Mr. Matt is one of the big dogs, and I like Mr. Matt here because he's a little bit of an offbeat guy. He's a guy that I appreciate because, like me, he kind of goes against the current and comes up with his own ideas. And I wanted to bring him on and talk about it, kind of see how his ideas stack up against mine. So, Mr. Matt, che succede, my friend? How you doing?
Grazie mille. Bonsoir, mon cher bel ami. How's everybody doing? I hope everyone is doing fine, and wishing, thoughts and good vibes and good prayers to everybody affected by the storm right now.
Oh, there's a storm going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something hitting Florida and the East Coast right now. What is it? The Hurricane Ian or something, right?
Oh, geez. So there's like a big catastrophic hurricane, and I'm such a fucking hermit that I haven't even heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Hurricane Ian has already hit Florida right now.
Oh, damn. Is it coming up to us?
I have no idea.
Oh, let's hope not. That'd be
I know.
lousy. So, thoughts and blessings and strength to everybody out there that's pushing against Hurricane Ian. Hopefully hopefully it's not that bad. That's lousy. But let's get right into it, Mr. Matt. Let's talk about Neo-Decadence. Now, you've written a few articles about this topic, and this is a topic that to me was like kind of out of left field. Like I didn't think anybody was gonna. Somebody in the chat said Neo-Decadence is Paul Grealism. That's based. But so it kind of came out of left field because a lot of the current, I'm not even gonna, we'll get into it. Give us a rundown on what neo-decadence means and what is it. Just, you have the floor, go ahead.
Sure. So I think first it's important to understand what decadence is in my mind. Decadence is connected with aestheticism and symbolism. Uh, it is art for art's sake. It is not for any moral, not for any ideology. It is without boundaries. It is without reason. It embraces the absurd. It embraces self indulgence. There is certainly social critique, an element of satire, uh, a look at society's decay and crumbling, but also an affinity with artifice and with luxury and of the surface of things, the symbols of things, and dreams, right? Now, for neo decadence, like you've been saying, it's hard to exactly talk about neo decadence because decadence itself had such a short life. Decadence was with the fin de siècle and the Belle Époque, and it really only took off in France. It hit a little bit of Italy, touched in a little bit of England, went, to a few places. Obviously, we had the great Irish decadent author Oscar Wilde, but uh, he was a bit of an outlier, right? He wasn't exactly well liked. The Brits, they ruined the man's life. They ruined his career. He had to get exiled, go to France just to escape the
Ooh.
persecution after he was in the Yellow Book and he did his play Salome, and uh, which, by the way, Al Pacino did an incredible version of Salome, talking about Maupassant.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful version. Al Pacino does great. So I think when we talk about neo decadence, for a long time, neo decadence has just kind of been honestly a look back uh, through theater and through film. Really, like I said, we've got guys like Al Pacino trying to bring it back, but really, there hasn't really been anything like neo decadence. Like I think the closest thing we have to anyone recently was Clark Ashton Smith, who died in the
Mm.
'60s, right? So when I talk about wanting to bring decadence back, I really am serious about honestly looking at something that never even had enough room to grow in the first place. It's was born in the middle of the 19th century, and then just because of all the political correctness at the time, you can imagine, it was just completely cut off. With the imprisonment of Oscar Wilde, you had the end of decadence because then everybody was clutching their pearls. The theaters were shutting their doors to any kind of aestheticism. Aesthetes were, had to hide their projects, and that was basically it. That was, and everybody knew that that was happening. That's why they called it the end of the age because everyone, I think, could see the future. They knew that that was the end of real sophisticated society, and that kind of sentiment you can even feel in the work of Edgar Allan Poe, which Poe wasn't a decadent, but he was definitely a dark romanticist, and so much of decadence owes a lot to Edgar Allan Poe. In fact, one of my favorite Italian decadent writers and creators is Camilla Boito, and he did a really incredible work. I think it's called Christmas Eve, which a lot of people were saying was a lot like Poe, a lot like his short story Berenice, which is an incredibly powerful work.
Hmm.
So uh, when when I'm talking about bringing back decadence, the way I see it is I just want to devote myself entirely to beauty in a time where beauty is aggressively being attacked. I want to live my life covering myself in the flower and jewels and honey and blood of this spirit of everything that's beautiful. I don't want any limitations. I don't want anyone to tell me what I can and can't write, which is also why I love transgressive literature. I love stories like American Psycho, uh, stories even like Lolita, because it's like in this day and age, you can only have like the superhero, the crime fighter, or the woke whammon feminist ultra uber Mary Sue who can do no wrong, and everything is just given to her. There's no room to grow out of that. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying no. I don't need this. I don't need any of this. I'm gone. I'm going away. I'm going to hide myself in a cloister of gems and books and art, and I'm going to clothe myself in dreams and and nightmares, and I'm just going to live my life, because modernity has completely failed, and I just want to be able to express my my art. The art is everything, and you can't have art without a sense of beauty, right? And so art has to do two things. It has to say something about objective beauty, to honor objective beauty, and then it must try then to say something about subjective beauty. And right now we live in a time where subjective beauty is, in a way, you could almost say it's ruling the show, but it's not, because everything is agitprop, right? They want to say speak your truth today, right? But look at Georgia Maloney, right? Like it's all
Hmm.
about girl power and speaking your truth, but then as soon as you talk about religion, family, and fatherland, what do they call you? They,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They call you Mussolini, which is completely racist, by the way. Just because she's Italian, they're gonna call her Mussolini. It's ridiculous. And I'm not. And let me just say, I'm not for her or against her. I don't know what she's gonna do. You know what I mean? Because Italian politics has been corrupt for years. It's been terrible. It's nuts what's going on over there. You know. But that's the point: is that art does not need to be constricted to an artist or boundaries or nations or anything political. Art is the sacred experience when you are in front of something, when you're holding a book, when you're looking at the painting right there, when you're seeing the sculpture right there and you're involved with it. That is what I'm talking about, is the sacred, absolutely sublime experience of being in art and receiving the will of the artist, which is why anything that we use with tech creates more filters and distances ourselves from that sacred art, and then it becomes more like science. So people get offended when I say things like this, but it's like, it's not to demean any kind of artwork. It's not to say this is lower or not. All I'm saying is, like, let's remember exactly what art is. Art is a human, natural, sacred, divine experience that involves you in a way that modern society is actively against. You see what I'm saying? It is against art, and I'm for art for the sake of art.
Yeah, I agree with you know so there's some pretty good comments here. My boy Imperium Press, my boy Mike, he says, I don't know how to say this word, fin de siècle, fin de
Oh
cycle,
yeah, yeah, right. Yep,
was a high point of Western culture. Eric Satie,
yep,
Italian futurism, Henry Bergson's irrationalism. He says they're pretty
yep,
close in spirit to us. He says, check out the art of Sydney. Is that Syme or
yep,
Sime?
yep. Syme is incredible. I mean, when we talk about like visual artists, I mean, too. Let's not forget like Moreau, Redon, Klimt, Beardsley. Virgil Finlay, right? I mean, Lautrec. The list goes on, but the the symbolism is what is what is the point, because it creates a sense of movement. I think that's what he was talking about. Futurism was a lot about the movement, because it
Yeah.
tried to capture the essence of being physically there with the art to create a sense of movement, of blur, of fast space and time. uh, Futurism is very modern, so it's not exactly uh, too much in affinity with aestheticism, but it definitely holds that same affinity with that sense of artifice and speed uh, and and movement that decadence does like to portray with its symbols.
Yeah. I got a question for you, but I
Yeah,
wanted to tell a quick anecdote here about when I started to. I guess not when I didn't, because I didn't start to think about art at this point, but it certainly planted the seeds in my mind that like got the gears rolling for quite a long time. Now, obviously, I am not a visual artist. I'm a writer, and I guess you could say, I once upon a time I was a musician, so I am
not.
acquainted with different styles of art and stuff like that. I'm a poet, et cetera, et cetera. Or
Mm-hmm.
I will someday publish my poetry, but um,
Do it.
so some years ago, circa 20 or 2007-ish, I worked as a security guard, and one of the places that I worked at was this. I worked for this. I was a security guard for a third party corporate company that did security for this like big global corporation. Right. I'm not gonna say what it is because
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say. So
Right.
I worked in this place that had this office building, and in this office building were the highest ups of the company, right? CEOs, et cetera, COOs, whatever all those abbreviations mean. That's who was there. Guys that had F4 McLarens and Rolls Royces and cars that uh, none of us could afford, even if we took our lifetime savings and put them together and times it by 10. These guys were like millionaires, and some of them were like billionaires. That's how wealthy a lot of these people were. So I worked in this place. I'm just a working class, poor white trash, Pennsylvania guy, and have to wear this tie and this thing, and I got to deal with these people. Well, one of the things that stuck in my mind for a long, long time is the one night I had to do I had to come in a little bit early because they had this uh, menagerie, they called it. It was like an art gallery display thing for this certain, nonprofit, art organization that was in the area. This like of these yuppies, and my fellow security guard said, "Yo, you're gonna have fun. The circus is in town." They kept calling it the circus. So I was like, "All right, this is gonna be weird." And they were right; it was weird. So I'm sitting there in my guard station, and this lady walks in. The big beehive hair. She's probably in her 40s. Aging trophy wife, and she asked me to come like change the trash for her, and wasn't my job. I'm a security guard. And then I said, that's not my job, but I can, go tell the people, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, I have to go into this room and, do my security guard thing. So I stuck around and watched what these people were doing. Now, this was a group about maybe like 30 or 40 people max. They were all uber rich, overwhelmingly the wives of these businessmen who were just kind of sitting off to the side discussing things among themselves and then clapping when everybody would clap to pretend that they were participating. The part that I walked into was they were kind of like unveiling art and everything like that, and all clapping, circle jerking, and like patting each other on the back for it. And there's this one character that was there. He looked like some sort of like, now this is 2007, so this is before all of the woke stuff. This was before I was like really into, I understood, like I had a political worldview at all. I was just a guy. I liked playing heavy metal riffs with my band, drinking beer after work, and like that's what I was about. Like I was about drinking beer and rocking out and talking to girls, and that's pretty much what I was about at that point. So I go to this place, and there's these creatures there, right? These I've never seen. At this point, I never saw people like this before. Like these like cross dressing weird
Yeah.
guys that had the finger thing. And there's this one guy. He was like one of their pets. They loved this guy. He had like a full woman's makeup on, wearing a woman's blouse. Like he looked like a freaky cross dresser, right?
Right.
And he unveils this. It was like a big trifold. I guess it was like cardboard or poster board or whatever of this art that he made, and it was a bunch of like Ku Klux Klansmen with their hoods off, and they're all wearing makeup, right? Like women's lipstick and everything like that. Now, obviously, I'm not like in the Ku Klux Klan or anything like that. It means nothing to me, right?
Right.
But it was just like weird that it was like they made this, and this is what happened that made me feel some kind of way. So, and I'm gonna finish my story up because I know I'm rambling. But
No, go ahead.
he unveils this, and it was like this lady walks up and says like how brave this is, and like let's have a round of applause for how courageous this masterpiece was. This art, like, it wasn't terrible, but it was like something that like one of my amateur buddies could have done. It did not, it is by no stretch deserve to be in some sort of art gallery. It was not. It was very, very mediocre painting, right? I guess it was oil or watercolor. I don't even know what it was. But and then they all clapped and whatever, and then the lady said something to the tune of, she says, I would love to, she goes, I would love to see the look on their faces when they see this, but unfortunately they couldn't afford to be here. And then everybody like goes, and they all chuckle. that like dug into me as a guy that grew up working class. It's like the Klan thing, who cares? But the fact that they're protected behind these walls in this group of 40 other jerk-offs, like just patting each other on the back for this mediocre art and saying like, talking down about effectively poor people. They're talking bad about like taking, like, just dunking on poor people. And this is what they were like so proud of themselves about. And that dug into me, because that didn't matter, to them, the Klan. It could have been just like some guy in overalls. It could have been just anything that represents like working class America, and they would have had the same reaction, right? So it was like, I remember like feeling hot, and I had to walk away. It pissed me off so bad. And then I go in, I sit down. I remember thinking, I was like, what a bunch of cowards. They pat themselves on the back for like saying that they're so brave, to pretty much doing nothing. There's no danger. The Klan isn't coming to get them. The Klan, like she said, probably these guys talking about can't afford a bus ticket to come up because they're poor working class people. And it's like that just like insulted me beyond belief. And from that point on, I was like, fuck art. I hate art. I hate artists. From that point on, but I didn't. I love art. I loved Heavy Metal Magazine. I loved animations. I loved music. I love this stuff. But I was like, if that is what art is about, then I want nothing to do with it. And that stuck in my craw for a long, long time. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I gotta ask, at that point, when you tried to leave, did they ask you for the password? Did they, was it like Fidelio or something? Did they all come at you with like masks and
like an Eyes Wide Shut party?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the second password?
Yeah. That's the password for the house. You need the password for the party. Yeah, no, nothing like that.
Bob Hope mask guy shows up. Dave, we're gonna need you to come to the reception room.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, that I wouldn't put it past those weirdos. Who knows what they were doing? But that was like my first interaction with like institutional, I guess, like the art community or whatever you call it. So at that point, and I was like, that stuck with me. And to this day, when I started the Bizarre Archives and started doing like these like art related things that I'm doing, I was like, I want to destroy that. I want to smash that into a million pieces.
And this is the problem, right? Because this is not your reaction is completely rational, they're twisting art is not about. I mean, obviously, art demands to be in the hands of those who are worthy to make the art. Art should not be, at the whims of corporations and the masses who just want to follow trends and fandoms and fan service. Art needs to be controlled by, honestly, art needs to be for those artists who can manage it, right? But art isn't supposed to be behind paywalls. You know what I mean? Like what they're doing now with art
Yeah.
is
Well,
just saying that art is only for the people who are with the programming and who can live on Martha's Vineyard and afford to go to Ivy League, right? But that's not how art is really supposed to be, right? Art is supposed to be for everyone to enjoy.
yes.
Anybody can go to a museum or anyone can visit the Louvre, but anyone should be able to. I mean, you know, anyone should be able to go to a museum, go walk in spaces and see art, churches, cathedrals, temples, shrines. These places are all art. Art should not be just for the elites. And that's the problem. They have made art this elite experience, and that's destroying art. Uh, I think because so it goes both ways. I think
And
I feel like that there are too many untalented people right now who have control of art,
yeah.
and at the same time, there are too many deep pockets controlling who gets to experience art, and it's just a really nasty, contradictory environment.
Yeah.
When you have all these buffoons who have no talent calling themselves musicians and artists and whatever. I mean, you think Hollywood has any talent? Hollywood has no talent. That's not art. You know what I mean? All these people, they make these giant statues of nurses. That's, what I mean? That's not art. This is propaganda. But they want to pat themselves on the back, and they want to sell their art for thousands of dollars, and it's just like this Andy Warhol stuff. And that's what I'm saying, is that they're making this kind of art to be exclusionary. It's become class warfare, and I'm completely against that.
Yeah. And
I'm again
speaking of art paywalls, everybody should
yeah.
go subscribe to our Substack. It's only $5 a month.
Yes. Subscribe to the Biz Archives.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you. So when you were talking about decadence, you're describing decadence. A lot of what you're talking about sounded like romanticism. How does
Yes.
decadence separate from romanticism? What is the difference? Because you mentioned Clark Ashton Smith. I would
Yeah.
say he was a romantic. So
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I would say romanticism. Let's. I've done plenty of essays and articles on the DMR Books blog about this. So if anybody wants to check out my work, in case I miss anything here, I've written tons of stuff on the DMR Books blog that you can get a little bit of a better understanding of what I'm saying. But I'll try to keep it brief here. Basically, let's talk about romanticism first, right? So romanticism came from this idea that machines are the devil. That industry and destroying nature and the Enlightenment and codifying everything and putting all this knowledge into encyclopedias and turning everything into a assembly line was going to be bad for the soul, bad for the world, bad for everything. So romantics went two different ways. You had some romantics who became more like transcendentalists, who were just like, oh, God is in everything, nature is beautiful, art is to connect back to the beauty of nature, and everything is great and wonderful, and we're gonna paint and do poetry about pastorals and idols, and it's all gonna be about the common folk and the the beauty of the natural world, the beauty of the jungles and the raw primal world, not, against the industry and the machines of the Enlightenment, against the secular consumerist. And yeah, and if you can think about it, like, can you believe that back then they were thinking about this too? If only they knew what life was going to be like now. Like, I mean, they would hate it. So that's kind of like Romanticism. Now, then my playhouse is dark Romanticism. There were romantics uh, like Byron and Shelley, right? And who were talking about the evil of the world, the chaos of the world. They were creating imagery of darkness and death and madness and passion. Uh, but Edgar Allan Poe is the one to really take things deep into the psychological, into the macabre. Dark Romanticism, as we know it, really is an American creation. Romanticism started in Europe, in Germany, really, but then it really started to get big in England. Uh, it was only when the dark romantics in the United States were really taking things to the next level with upping, heightening the sense of dread and horror and death and misery, the conqueror worms, the chaos and the apocalypse, the adding in the gothic elements that were also coming in around the time. So romanticism and gothicism and dark romanticism really kind of circle around each other. They go hand in hand in hand, right? But gothic and dark romanticism, they're all kind of, you can still say it's all romanticism if you just want to put it under one big umbrella. Okay? The natural world, anti-industry, pro-individual. That's romanticism, right? Decadence then continues off of that, where Poe and Baudelaire were moving things. They took that romanticism and they said, yeah, but you know what? I really want to make a story about like a vampire drinking my blood while I'm dying and having like some kind of orgy with like a flower that's also sucking out my brains or something. Like, and I'm doing like opium and there's demons and it's fantastic. And, you know, like, you know what I mean? That's like the kind of stuff that the decadents were writing. They wanted to capture the absolute decay of everything and the indulgence and the beauty of everything. They took their senses and they fired a lightning bolt into them and they wanted to feel everything. They wanted to feel paradise and damnation. So,
So
uh,
what would
yeah.
you say to somebody that argues that like there's too much of that, there's too much indulgence today, so many people are addicted to drugs, everybody's addicted to porn, everybody's addicted to TV, there's just addictions everywhere, it's degenerate, it's depraved.
I
What would you
I
say to
would
somebody that argues that?
yeah, I would say that the difference really is it's hard to explain. You have to read it. The difference is that the decadents were anti vulgarity. In today's world, everything has just become vulgar. The decadents wanted to explore beauty first and foremost. They it wasn't just about how do I say it? Because like it's different from fast food restaurants and twerking and e-girls and all this. You know what I mean? Like it is the sense of finding spiritual, the sacredness of things in things, the sacred in the material, the divine, the magic, the beauty in illusion, in artifice, in madness, in death, in transgression. There was always a sense of moving towards something, even though there's doom. there's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know. Like, it's so hard to describe because you can't really describe something like this. How do you describe the pursuit of the human soul to just want to be? You know what I mean? Like, you almost can't. It's so different when you think about,
But do you
like,
think
let's
that
say the picture of Dor.
but
What's that?
would you say, do you think that a modern person could understand the nuance behind it, or they just like look at it and say like oh, orgy, sex, porn? You know what I mean?
I mean, I think what it would require is a sense of taste. First of all, the decadence had a sense of taste, of sophistication. They sought to be beautiful, decadent, and powerful. Modern society today is only the illusion of pleasure. It is so shallow. It is addiction. Yes, decadence does talk about addiction, but it's not just stories of taking pills. It's, it's stories about just like being in a room like full of jewels, and like, and trying to like find some sort of sense of ultimate gratification. You know what I mean? I can't, I honestly almost can't even explain it. It honestly is just something that you have to experience. Um,
But what if
and I
somebody
think it's,
argued something like to the tune of that sort of pleasure seeking or seeking the highest form of gratification leads to like what we have today, where you have just like a bunch of drooling apes that just watch porn all the time.
well, see, that's part of the criticism that it definitely got when Decadence was first coming out. People were just saying that it was just a bunch of perverts and freaks and fiends, and it was just completely missing the point. I think its tradition goes more into the Middle Ages, right, where you had Fableau being created, and that's something that I wanted to bring up. There's a sense of satire in Decadence, and there's a great collection of these Fableau, these like French medieval folk tales, these satiric poems. Right now, these were basically ways of looking at society and how corrupt things had really gotten underneath, while also kind of relishing in the decay, but also seeking beauty. Seek, maybe not exactly seeking a way out, but maybe. It's all rather subjective. Like, for instance, I have the book with me right now, The Fableau, translated by Nathaniel E. Dubin, introduction by R. Howard Block. Let's take a look at what some of these stories are. Right. Let's go into the table of contents here. The Fableau, story one: The Cunt Made with a Spade.
Shit.
Trollops and Troopers. What else? The Crucified Priest. The Cunt Blessed by a Bishop.
Oh
The
god, was it
Key.
a Cannibal Corpse album?
And we're talking about stuff from the Middle Ages here. We're uh the fellow with a dozen wives. Like,
All right, based.
yeah. I mean, we're talking about a sense of tradition that goes back hundreds of years. Modern society is not connected to any of that. The degeneracy that people worry about with the decadence movement, they're completely missing the point of it, and they're being willfully ignorant, because decadence is about beauty, it is about aesthetics, seeing beauties and symbols through aesthetics, and trying to cultivate this, whatever it is, your sense of beauty, uh that's linked to these sacred mysteries. It's not like the chivalric tale where it's like religious, or even linked to any kind of moral, but there is absolutely a power there, right? It's not empty. uh So anybody who wants to say that it would just be a complete waste of filth. They're just completely missing the point. And personally, I don't think that people like that could enjoy the genre. It's definitely not for everyone, and that is completely fine. Decadence seeks no one. People find decadence. It In a way they come to it, and when the time is right, it opens itself to them. They find each other, I believe.
So, eh, this is kind of where I would argue that what you're describing here. I would say that few modern people, like let's say that and I think that I don't disagree with the fact that a lot of this stuff people just misunderstand now because it has more nuance. There's some satire to it. It's not necessarily supposed to be just like gross pornographic. It's not supposed to be just perverted, right? It has something to it. But what I would argue is whether or not it's nuanced or not, kind of loses it when the people that are around walking around today don't have the capacity to understand that nuance. And I would argue that a art movement today, it should not be some shut in little we shouldn't be seeking niches anymore, because that's what niches is what happened with the genre wars in science fiction and fantasy and stuff. You have all these, effectively these, like, everybody that reads, that is involved with the industry of science fiction, fantasy, horror, and all that, will know that big pub, or as I call fem pub, is like completely controlled by these nerds and feminists and weirdos, and they've pretty much just taken it away and turned it into a little niche and took it away from the people. And they've made it into something that most people don't have the capacity to understand, and the rest of them find it repulsive because it's weird and it's dumb and it's not
And
imaginative.
I think that's exactly what decadence wants to do, though. It's a genre that wants to repulse and to shock, and obviously it isn't for everyone. I personally don't see the problem with forming niches. I don't see the problem with creating something that isn't for everyone.
But didn't you say earlier on that art should be for everyone?
Well, what I mean when I say art should be for everyone is I think anyone should be able to look at a piece of art and then be able to judge for themselves what it is.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I'm not saying What I'm not saying is that like a painting should represent everyone and vibe with everyone. What I'm saying is that art should be open for everyone to experience and enjoy. Obviously, if someone doesn't enjoy it, then go on, move on. It's not for you. Do your own thing. No one's forcing you to be here.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, that kind of like so that kind of doesn't really jive with how I'm like looking at things. When I look at art, I think it's time to bring art back to the people, because when I define art is magic. Art is a conveyance of power between the skald, between the bard, between the artist, and between the observer. And the point of art is to thrust the observer into an immersive experience, a fantasy, right? To force this upon them, force a feeling, force their imagination, like whatever. It's like a conveyance of power. So when I look at like art that is just very, very niche and everything like that, I don't think that it serves the purpose of what art should be. I feel that we have enough niches and we have enough subgenres upon subgenres, because the motivation of a mechanized society is to create categories, is to because I'm myself, I'm pretty, I like to look at subgenres and talk about them and all this because it's fun to talk about. And there's just it's we're into that. But as a whole, and when we write fiction, I think genres are dumb. I think genres only really serve as like bins to pull
I
different
completely
elements out
agree.
of.
I completely agree that genre is a dumbing down. Genre is vulgar. I don't mind, writing in tropes. I've certainly done it, but it
I love
is
tropes. I
it
think
is
tropes are great.
it is I believe that we should be trying to break away from tropes. I'm not saying that they should never be used, but I think it's good. I think it's fine, and I think it's beautiful to want to create something that is more literary. And circles will always develop. There are always circles of enlightenment, just like there are circles of art. And some people will gravitate to the outer rims. Some people will gravitate to the inner circles. It's a learning experience. There are certainly levels of high and low art, and I don't personally see a problem with that because that's just human growth and human understanding. And people weren't made to be utilitarian or unilateral. And art is the same way. Art is going to naturally bring certain people together, and decadence is one of those genres. It's one of those spheres that demands a certain level of sophistication, demands a certain level of appreciation, certainly for aesthetics. And it's not going to be for everyone, and it doesn't need to be. Uh, and the thing that I like about that is that in today's woke mainstream culture, the fem pub corporations are demanding that they stick their hands in their noses and everything, demanding that it represent everyone, that it be a mirror to represent every single person, every single stage of victimization, and that is wrong. And that is
Yeah.
why I believe in niches. There should be things that are only for certain people, certain societies, certain ways of thought. And if you want to jump into those ponds, do so at your own risk. Okay? You
I'll
you know,
agree with
if you
that.
want, there are people out there getting offended is, "Oh, well, this wasn't made for me." Well, no kidding. It wasn't made for you. Nothing, you know what I mean? Why does so many people are seeking validation and just strong arm art to become like mirrors of reality? That is the opposite of what good art should be.
Yeah, a lot of this goes into you see, when you look at the kind of like this the psychosis of like the liberal humanist mind, they can't fathom that anything before now was good, right? Everything that is good is coming in the future, and anything that is from the past must mirror today for it to be good. So you get
Right.
this very unimaginative, and they completely just destroy fantasy with this because fantasy is supposed to take you to a far off, like weird place.
Right.
And
And they're
when
doing it with Tolkien. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And what they do is they make it just look like mundane modern reality to see walking around because they can't fathom because it completely because if something before now, a time period before now or a time period outside of now is good, or there's good people in it, or there's redeeming qualities to it, the entirety of their universalist worldview falls to pieces, and they can't have this cognitive dissonance. So they must force everything into the meat grinder of liberal humanism.
Right. See, and that's the problem is that, life is about struggle and pain, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, honestly. Like, no one can stop that. The very fact that you exist, that all of us are here alive, creates a natural consequence of suffering and chaos. And that's just basically a way of saying shit happens. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, what I'm trying to say is that the woke media mainstream regressive party of political correctness and wokeism, because it's religion. Wokeism is a religion.
Yeah, it's a cult, world cult.
They cannot stand strength. They cannot stand true difference. The fact that there are I'm sure that the fact that there are even political boundaries infuriates them. They cannot stand the idea that Europe should be for Europeans, and that anybody should have different cultures or different beliefs, different religions, different types of food. Everything has to be a gray paste of bugs and soy, and and that's why it's like, what, it's time to take the gloves off. It's time to go back to being human and to appreciate what humans appreciate. And what do humans want? Humans gravitate towards beauty. And that is exactly what we need now. And if that offends people, well,
Yeah, well,
what
beauty in itself is differential, right? By having beauty, period, implies that there is there is a select few, like a select few that are beautiful, and there is a majority of ugly, or at least not beautiful. And the fact that everybody can't be beautiful sticks in their crawl. So they have to, they you hear, we must deconstruct, we must abolish. And they say it is some sort of system, or it's some sort of institution, or what, the institution of beauty, Western beauty standards, or like all this nonsense, because beauty in of itself is against the entirety. If beauty exists, if objective beauty exists, liberal humanism falls apart, and they can't have that. So I wanted to go to something else and ask you about it, because we could talk about beauty and all that all day long, because that's like the but so in decadence, and your idea of neo-decadence, you are, and I've seen you talk about it on Twitter, you go hard on this, which I actually, I go and I lurk on the threads because I like seeing how worked up you get about it. You hate AI art, right? You think that in your opinion, video games cannot be art. And you have a, and people are gonna, like, people who are familiar with my content are gonna know I am a proud Luddite. One of the books that I suggest all the time is Shrinking the Technosphere by Dmitry Orlov. I'm really Ted pilled, I guess you could say, right? But this is the question that I have for you, and this is something that goes back to kind of what we were pressing on before, which was, how is this neo-decadence feasible if most people don't even have, or even like maybe even, I don't want to say all, but if it is really hard for people to have even just the capacity to understand the nuance, because there's the concept of thrownness, right? You're thrown into the age that you are, whether you like it or not, right? So if moderns, and that includes all of us here, if moderns can't understand that, why is it that these things like AI art, or video games, or certain other types of technological things? Because what you're saying is we should go back to this older romantic mode of doing art, oil paintings, and like more these styles of music. A lot of modern people aren't acquainted with this kind of stuff, and to me, to ask a mod, because let me tell you, just finding artists that do the pulp style is really, really hard. The overwhelming majority of artists are graphic designers today, comic book artists, or manga artists. And I'm not saying those things are bad, but what I'm saying is that's what people are used to. So it's
Right.
like, so I'll wrap up real quick. I'm sorry, I'm a rambler, but
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm enjoying this.
so to me, it's kind of like asking like a modern, like, car mechanic, like a Mercedes mechanic, to fix your steam engine, right? It's like he understands mechanics, so he can get in there. He might be able to fix a couple things, but as a whole, it's not alien to him, but it's something that it's just like obsolete to. I don't want to say obsolete, that's a bad word, but that's something that is
Right.
really,
It's an
you know
ugly
what I'm
term,
saying.
but you have to use it. Yeah. Well, I would say first, I would like to bring up the Romantics were not alone in thinking this, but for a long time, there have been people who have seen the warning signs of the industrial revolution, of the mechanization of life, right? I mean, let's just think about what it took to go around the globe blasting apart mountains, cutting down hills and trees, and covering the globe in tar and factories and smoke, right? You know, doesn't that just seem wrong? Doesn't that just seem completely vulgar and
Big
crude and
time.
just truly corrupt? And if human beings are capable of that massive feat, that massive undertaking, then they can go back. They can put the work in to rebuild the natural way of life, to go back to what it means to be human. Because let's just look at the dire circumstance that we're in now. We are losing our humanity. We're giving away our sacred experiences to technology. We are giving away everything that makes us human to tech, to corporations, to all this bureaucracy. This is not life. I cannot I don't even know what would happen if you were to go back to the 19th or even the 20th century, folks. and tell them about what has happened, because this is a nightmare. Nobody can do their jobs right. Nobody knows how to do anything. Where is the skill? Where are the craftspeople?
Mm.
Where are the trades? We have lost so much. People don't even learn calligraphy and cursive handwriting anymore in schools. There
Yeah.
is a desperate, dire, dreadful need to go back and get civilized again, to tap into what makes us human, which which is so bizarre that I even need to say that, because you know it's just so weird, y- so crazy. It really does make me feel like I am completely born in the wrong time. But I don't know, maybe the time needs me now. Maybe it needs people like us to say, okay, we're done. We're enough. Let's get things right again. And I feel like maybe Clark Ashton Smith, because don't get me wrong. This wasn't just a European movement. There were American decadents too. We had Clark Ashton Smith. We had Robert W. Chambers. King in Yellow, right?
Yeah.
We had our O'Sullivan. We had our Saltus. So there has been a need for the aesthete. There, there has been a need for the dandy to walk. There's been a need for the flaneur to wander through the streets again, for his spirit to glide through the cafes and the galleries once more, right? Uh, we absolutely need people who really understand the sacredness, the beauty, the the aesthetics. Let's talk about aesthetics, right? Because aestheticism was a little bit different from decadence, but in a way they were both linked. Uh, I think the aesthetic movement, which has so much in common with symbolism and Art Deco and Art Nouveau and all this, it really was such a lust for life, to drink everything in, uh, to see the doom and the devastation that was coming, and to just live life for the sake of life, to see life imitate art, instead of art imitating life. And it is something that is very passionate to me. I I must apologize because I'm not being articulate enough. Maybe I'm not explaining it right, but it is something that is absolutely critical. It is absolutely critical for me.
No, I do. I get it. It's a big topic. It's hard to squeeze it into just like an hour, or hour and a half, or whatever. But um, so I kind of wanted to go back to my question here: is wouldn't it be more efficient, or more potent, or more effective if we, because this is what this is where me and you agree, and this is where everybody in the chat's going to agree. Pretty much all of us, what makes us different than the woke cultists and the libtoads and like all these creatures out there, what makes us different than them is that we believe that we should align society, align the world in line with nature and our nature and nature itself. And when I say nature, I don't just mean physical nature. I mean nature proper, as in all of the immanential processes of nature itself. So if that's where we're coming from, and it is where we're coming from, right? You articulated very succinctly how art is a reflection of nature. We need to live that's more holistically in line with our nature, as how human beings should. So if our nature is now something a little bit different than what it was 200 years ago, wouldn't it be more potent, more efficient, more effective to create an art movement or an art philosophy that is more in line with people's nature today?
Well, let's look at the work of, like, let's say Pierre Louis, right? Uh, Gustave Flaubert, who were writing about very primitive societies. Even you know what? Let's even talk about Salome, Oscar Wilde's Salome. Right? We're talking about these stories that are so far in the ancient times of Egypt and Alexandria and ancient Rome, Carthage, the ancient Mediterranean, right? And they're able to bring this sensuality, this eroticism, exoticism, this power in these old times. It's, you know what I mean? It wasn't just writing that was all, in 19th century, 18th century France. You had writers going back, and Robert E. Howard absolutely has connections with this, with his character, of Salome. What was that story? I believe it was. I wrote about it in my most recent article. A Witch Shall Be Born by Robert E. Howard. That's what it is. A Witch Shall Be Born. There's a character called Salome. So we can clearly see between Robert E. Howard and Clark Ashton Smith, and even with Lovecraft, who's talking about like Cthulhu orgies and things like that, in Smith orgies. Those are my favorite stories, by the way, but from him. The works that Lovecraft does when he throws a little bit of decadence in there, that's the good stuff for me. But anyway, it has a link to sword and sorcery, and that's what I try to prove in my DMR articles. So in a way, I think that your fear that maybe modern society just won't get it, I just think it's unfounded. I think that there's no sense to fear that modern society won't get decadence, because in a way, decadence kind of maintained itself through sword and sorcery, through the influence of Robert E. Howard, uh, and Clark Ashton Smith, and Lovecraft, and anybody touched by them. You know?
I mean, I would. So this is kind of where I would say that, I call these guys the pulp romantics, right? The pulp romantics were very much interested in tapping back into the mythopoetic current, right? They were trying to tap into something primordial. I very much I argue all the time, and guys listening will have heard me say it, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. Conan is a son of Beowulf, is a son of King Arthur, is a son of Odysseus. This is a literary tradition that has been going on since the dawn of time. And so what these guys are kind of going for is to tap into this very
Yes.
primordial current. But
Yes.
decadence
Decadence
is
does the same thing.
but it sort of seems like decadence is a little bit more concerned with kind of this thrust of personal expression of
Right.
which is a little bit different
Yeah,
because
decadence is more concerned with existentialism and the inner workings of the artist himself. Where sword and sorcery is more of just beer, wine, and wenches, right?
I would argue that it's about heroic. It's a retelling or a repackaging, I would say, of heroic ballads of heroic art from the
Well,
ancient times.
heroic in one sense, but I feel like sword and sorcery is very low fantasy in the sense that it doesn't need a hero. Conan certainly doesn't care about saving civilizations or really saving anybody. He just happens to save people, and it just so happens that they are very beautiful most of the time.
But Odysseus didn't care either.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Uh
So it's like
and
these
that
guys,
and that
these
it's
heroes are kind of, and this is, and I'm not sure you probably see me talk about it. This is why I hate the Mary Sue. I think the Mary Sue is a failure of storytelling. The
yeah.
Supermans and like the Captain Americas. I think these characters suck and they're
Yeah, that
vanilla.
that that's why I don't like superheroes. That's why I can't do anime anymore. Sorry to say it, but not sorry to say it. Because anime has just become all this isekai superhero. You know what I mean? It's like every character, every main protagonist is basically a Mary Sue. Even the slice of life stuff, I just can't even get. I'm not going to get into that. I think I've already angered enough people with all my talk of cunts and priests and all this stuff. Who knows? But anyway, I can't do superheroes anymore because of this sense. I don't care about morality in stories. I don't care about heroics. Uh, you can have an epic heroic poems and stories, sure, but that's not why I read. I want to read. I'm more interested in the criminal mind. I'm more interested in the mind of and first of all, I'm not interested in the mind of normal people either, which is probably another reason why I can't really jive with anime. I don't care about the heroes or the normal characters or the Mary Sues who just get handed everything. I want to see the twisted people, the people who are passionate, who risk everything for one night of supreme passion, of damnation that no human will ever be able to achieve again. That is more interesting to me.
I don't know. I I'm not with you on that. I think I,
I've
I think
lost them.
I I think that the primordial hero, like the Ubermensch, right, the Nietzschean Superman style of Conan, of Odysseus, of Beowulf. I think he's gritty, he's rough, he's a little bit selfish. He can be lustful and greedy, but he's also a good guy, and he's very human, right? He's very understandable because it's exactly what any guy would how any guy would behave if they were of this noble birth and effectively of this like superhuman effect. If they any guy, if they were bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, and richer and more noble than every other human being that they come in contact with, they're gonna be piping ladies, they're gonna be getting rich, they're gonna be sailing all over the world looking to fight monsters just so they can bring the head back and brag about it, right? They're just gonna do boss shit just for the sake of doing boss shit because they can. And I argue that there's nothing wrong with that because that is what the hero has always been, right? And so I
Mhm.
want to, we're going over an hour here, so I want to come back to the technology question.
I agree with a
Okay,
little
go
bit.
ahead.
I disagree with a little bit. I can go both ways. I'm not too sure if, like, let's say the heroes were just fighting the good fight just for a good adventure. I think what a lot of people today miss is the tragedy that happens in these stories.
Sure.
W- You know, but like I said, there should be, and it's fine to have fiction for everyone. There's going to be people like me who think Clark Ashton Smith is better than Robert E. Howard,
Oh
and
God, that hurts. Not to say Smith is absolutely a genius, brilliant, but it's just like in my book, Howard's like the king. You know what I mean?
no, I don't believe that Clark Ashton Smith or Robert E. Howard or H.P. Lovecraft were absolute titans of their craft. I believe that there's a lot to admire about their work. They definitely did a lot of great work. I just think that out of the weird three, Clark Ashton Smith is my guy. Uh, if anyone is wondering, if they can get into my work, I would definitely think if you love Lovecraft and you're more into Smith and you love European culture and art, you love the macabre and skeletons and demons and insanity and a little bit of aftertaste of existentialism, then maybe you want to try out my work. See if it's
Yeah.
for you.
Now, I would the three that you mentioned, I would argue. I think that Howard and Lovecraft and Smith are like the greatest writers of all time. They're like I think that
Oh,
they're
okay.
yeah, they're like my absolute favorites, and I don't think that like no other. There's other writers that are great, obviously, but those are like my guys. But so let's go over. I want to
Right.
ask you. This is something I've been. This is what I wanted to hit before we start winding down here. Why can't video games be art? And I'm going to preface this by saying, so in the hyper romantic school of thought, right? We
Right.
accept our thrownness. We understand that we are trapped in hyper modernity. We understand that we're trapped in the hyper reality and that we have been shaped by by the technosphere, right? And that we must tap back into the primordia, which was the mythopoetic current that we kind of left off when the internet was invented, which was, we're talking 1995. Because if you go back pre 1995, and I know that's not that far away, but that's the point, is that you go back there and there's still awesome stuff. Like, you pick up a Tales from the Crypt comic, you go watch old school WWF, you listen to a lot of the music, you listen to the old heavy metal albums, you go check out the old school Dungeons and Dragons people were playing, you go look at the video games that were being made, you look at the art that was being drawn, Ken Kelly and Frazetta, and obviously these a little bit earlier than the 90s, but Clyde Caldwell and all these guys. You look at the fantasy and the science fiction art, you look at the stuff that we were really into as kids, watching the Terminator movies, all of this, The Thing, like this era of art, in my opinion, was the last period that art was great. And I think that in order for us to break out of this, we need to readapt these art forms that were around in our lifetimes, because they are legitimate art traditions, in order for us to break out. But in this school of thought, we understand, we accept this idea that, like, for example, video games can be art. And I know that you are very against that idea. Why are you against that idea?
Well, to start, right, the way why you and I disagree on this goes back to why I think that
Your connection's getting real bad there for a second.
now?
No.
Okay.
Hello. Oh, crap. As soon as we get to the big topic.
Can you hear me?
Oh. There we go. There we go. Video games, why are they not art?
Okay. So this is why I think
we're losing you again. We're losing you again. Is there any way that I don't know what you did before to fix it? Can you do that again?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you at all. Speaking of technology, maybe Matt's right about technology not being good.
Hello?
There he is.
Okay. Let's talk about what happens with technology, right? Video games are not art because of technology and science. Science has become the new religion that is taking our humanity and is replacing all the other forms of our human identity. Science is trying to dominate religion. It's trying to dominate sports. It's trying to dominate entertainment. And it all goes into this idea of political correctness. Political correctness is the new wokeism, is the new science, which is the new Uber religion that is taking everything over. And people today have lost this connection with that sacred connection with nature and what art is. People need to realize what art is. Art is not just about things looking pretty or things that like give you a rush of feeling. It's not even about that. It's not a big reveal of some kind of plot twist. It's not about these crude, vulgar sensations. And this goes back into, I think, what makes decadence so powerful, because it's not just about crude emotions. Art is a sacred experience when you are there with the art, when you are physically holding the book and it's made out of paper and ink and words, and it is there with you, right?
But wouldn't you say that writing is technology?
Well, here's the thing. In like an electronic book is still literature, is still art, right? But there's a bit of a distancing that comes with the technology. You could still say that an ebook is art, but something has happened to distance us. When you get to a video game, there is so much of a distance. Now let's talk about the video game itself, because I've talked about science and technology now, about how it distances us. But now let's talk about the gaming. Art is not a game. Art is not sports. You cannot win art. Art is not interactive. Art is something that you experience when the will of the art and the artist comes to you. You do not interact back onto the art. The only thing you can do is try to interpret it subjectively and think about it objectively. But the only thing that there's only one form of movement, that's art and artist to observer. You cannot interact with art. You cannot win art. You cannot defeat a boss. Now, what is art is the music that goes into a game. The putting things together and making a set design look really beautiful. But as soon as you start interacting with that set, with that model, as soon as you start moving the camera around and walking around it, it starts to lose its sense of art. So then when you combine that with the gaming aspect, it's completely not even art anymore. It's science. It's science in sport. And that's not to say that it's not important. That's not to say that the game isn't beautiful. That's not to say that it can't be valued. Certainly, science has proven that it can do great and wonderful, miraculous things. But it's not art. Art is a sacred experience, and people don't even realize what art is anymore. And that's what Decadence tries to point out. Decadence tries to get people to think what really is art, what really is beauty. Now, Decadence is it certainly is obsessed with figuring out man's connection with artifice and things, right? But there's always a sense of melancholy that comes with the artificial. And why games can't be art, video games and sports cannot be art, is because they are sports, they are games, they are interactive, they require a competition of sorts. And that is not what art is. Art is not a simulated experience where you get to live and decide things, and it doesn't matter about what the game developer's intention was to make you walk through certain channels and go through certain levels. It's not about that. It's just the very idea that you're divided from the tech through the technology, which already creates a division, a distancing. And then on top of the fact that it is a game, that it demands competition. It's entertainment, it's gaming, it's sport, and it's science. And it's become so vivid, and it's become so uh powerful, that people have just assumed that this must be what art is, because now everything today is video games and movies, VR, mobile apps, phones, computers. So of course, how can you blame the people of today, from forgetting the absolute experience of what it requires to be experiencing art?
Yeah.
And this is the danger. This is exactly the danger that I talk about, is that we are losing the ability to even comprehend emotion, beauty, art, sacredness. I am not trying to offend or attack these things and say that they're absolutely worthless. I do feel like video games can become voids that people spend too much time on. I do feel like a lot of these video games and these board games and these systems have become simply escapism that just drags people down without any form of growth. I do feel like that is a danger. But certainly a game can be beautiful, and it can be wonderful, and it can create a sense of belonging with people in certain chat rooms and groups and things like that. But it is a game, and it is science. Games require competition, winning, losing mastery over something else. It requires the player to interact with the system and with other players and with other characters. It requires more tech and gadgetry and gears. It's just, in my mind, it's just not art.
All right. Well, you threw a few things at me there, so I kind of want to okay, where do I start here? So I love where you're coming from. I hate science. I say all the time science is gay. And I get all kinds of stuff. Like if people come at me about it, I don't care. Science sucks. I don't believe it. I think it's dumb. I think science is for dumb people. So let's get into what technology is, though. So you're saying that video games can't be technology or can't be art because they are technology. This brings into the equation of, well, video games can't be can't be art. So why is cinema art?
Well, that's the kind of thing that I've been battling with recently too, because now, recently, I've started to feel like cinema really isn't that much of an art that Hollywood tries to make it be. I think that, again, with film, you lose something too. Your distance, by the nature of film and the cameras and the DVDs and the DVD players and all that, the streaming services. You lose a lot of the soul of what makes something art. So I believe that maybe it might be time to start classifying cinema as a science and not an art.
So what I would argue is that the argument that you're saying right now is like how it detaches people and stuff like that. The same exact argument the Greeks used about reading and writing, literacy. They said that reading and writing was a literacy that was going to detach people from reality and all of this kind of stuff. So when we talk about that, we have to look at what technology is when we classify anything as technology. When we can look at video games, but let's take a step back to what technology is. Technology is the mastery of technique, right? And technology isn't necessarily gears and bolts and machines and engines and cell phones or whatever. Technology is the mastery of technique. And that's why technology is such a big category, and so much stuff can go into it. Nowadays we think of machines, but things like, even just if you just use machines as physical things, a paintbrush is technology, a graphite pencil is technology. You know what I mean? And then you go further, language is technology, right? So if you look at just the very definition of what technology actually is the mastery of technique, then art is a technology, right?
Well, I completely think that is, I'm sorry to say, but that is ridiculous, because that is obviously that is not what I am talking about. I'm not equating technology in that way. I'm Technology in the way that I'm talking about it is not paintbrushes and language and all that kind of
But those are
stuff.
technology.
I You know what I mean? I think that people are trying to split hairs with me on this. They're willfully being obtuse,
I'm
trying to.
not, though.
I I think that it's disingenuous to try to say that the technology of a paintbrush is the same as the technology of a gaming system.
But
And can,
you didn't say that, though. You said that because it is technology. Now, if we want to change, we want to say, well, modern technology, and I would absolutely agree that technology of today is different than technology of 300 years ago. Obviously, it is.
it
But
requires a balance, just like with all things. There has to be certainly a balance of things. Another reason why I really like aestheticism, because aestheticism seeks to create a personal balance of artifice and nature, right? Uh, so with art, we have to be careful about the amount of artifice and the amount of other properties, whatever properties they may be. Uh, but certainly it's not these things like painting, paintbrushes, and language like that, technique. I'm not talking about technique or craft. I'm talking about an overabundance into these gaming systems, film and cameras and all the science that's required to capture all this light and
But
all this stuff. It's too much.
but what I'm
Uh,
saying is, like, would you say that like old time photography is art, or is that not art either because it's you know a machine taking a picture?
I would suppose that as lovely as it is, I don't think photography is should be an art. It's not art in the same way that a painting is art. A photograph captures too many facts and no truth, and that's another thing that people, the modern day fast paced wage slave forgets is that it's not just about creating things that are realistic and miraculous. Wow, I can't believe that it was able to do all this. It makes it look like I'm really there. That's not art. Art is something else fundamentally, and people like to try to split hairs. But again, it's the tech, the balance of tech, natural forces, artifice, but then also we can't forget the very fact that video games are games. That's the thing that people try to avoid, is the fact that art cannot be a game.
Can war be an art?
No, absolutely not. War is not an art.
So the reason I bring that, I'm not trying to split hairs, but what I'm trying to point out here is that if you say that technology, and I'm not saying I disagree with you, but what I'm saying is, this is the argument that could be levied about that, is where on the timeline do we stop? Where do we put the divider down and say, okay, everything using technology before this can be art, and everything using technology after this can be art? Because paintbrushes and easels and all of this stuff is art, right? Or is technology. Having a play like a Shakespearean play. All of
Right, but
the
the thing is that, yeah, the performance, right? Think about that Shakespearean play. The performance is art, and sure, there's a lot of people putting on a performance, but you wouldn't expect then the audience to start getting up onto the stage and start interacting with the performance either. That's, you know what I mean? Then it starts to become more of a sense of entertainment, and almost like it almost becomes like a sport in a way. It becomes this, I don't even know, it almost becomes like a ritual of some kind. I don't even know, but it's not art. uh Now, people may talk about the art of war, or the art of this or art of that, and I believe that, you know when somebody says something like the art of war, right? What could that mean? I think art is being used in another form of definition to mean
as an
skill.
abstract.
Yeah, it is the crafting of war. But let's say that someone was saying that art wanted to talk about the aesthetics of war. Okay, well then we could talk about, basically, then the art of war is simply the preparation, the dance that one does alone to study and master art. It then becomes a dance. It is not the actual combat. It is the dance that is performed in preparation. It's not exactly the training, but it is the dance. It is the words. It is the manuscript that creates an aesthetic, to the point where it's more fiction or myth. The art of war then becomes an abstract subjective idea. It is not, like, you wouldn't say a manual is art. A manual is not art. Okay, yeah, this is how to conduct war, this is how to be successful. That's not art. But to create an aesthetic, a dance, a kind of symbol, then we might be able to try to find art. But just creating a handbook of, a
So you wouldn't
cornered fox
you
is more dangerous than a jackal. That's not art. That's just good advice.
would you so you would say that philosophy is not art.
No, 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 no. Philosophy is philosophy. Philosophy is not art.
I would say philosophy is science.
I don't know. I feel like there's enough room to maybe separate them. I'm not too sure yet. I
So
feel like,
I
I feel like there's a way to separate it.
yeah, that's that's going to be a whole other. We're going to be here for another hour if we open that can of worms. So I want to go back to what I was saying. Like for example, you mentioned in film how there's cameras and there's all this different lighting to give effects and all this kind of stuff. But that was like very present in like plays for a long time ago. You know, I mean they had different lighting, they used different effects, they had different sounds, they had like ropes and pulleys that used different things and made different.
Right.
There's plenty of technology. Then you got the stage that's at a certain level to give a certain illusion of the
Right,
eyes.
but then it becomes only art for the people that are present there. Having the DVD of it, that's not art. It's only art for those who are there in the moment. The actors and all the people filming and all the people watching, they're watching a performance, and that is art. And then unfortunately, we get the residue. We get the smoke and mirrors.
So I would just I don't know, where can I go? So I actually I think that I disagree because I really believe that anything that is created that thrusts an experience upon an audience and forces them to feel or experience or be immersed in somewhere else can be an art. And
Sure,
I would
yeah,
say that I think that in modernity, where we very much believe that we've created nothing good, we're very self-hating, that saying that video games can't be art is sort of robbing ourselves of probably the most potent art that we created in this epoch.
people have robbed themselves of one of the most potent forms of this epoch. That is the human spirit. The I mean, honestly, the video games are only a prison of the mind. It is entertainment and it is glorious, but you can also find the same stimulation by taking a walk in nature. But you wouldn't say that taking a walk through nature is art. It is just as meaningful and important, but it is not art. And that's the thing, is that we are so far away today because of the way we live. We're forced in this prison of wires and light bulbs and 5G and who knows 6G and all this stuff. It's very sad, but that's the point that I'm trying to say, is that it is a sad state of affairs that we are in today. And that is the problem, is the writers back then could not have imagined the cyber hell that would have come to take the future. And I'm just completely against it. And it is wrong. And and I will defend the absolute pure spirit of the artistic experience. And again, video games can be rewarding, can be good for entertainment. Sometimes you have nothing else to do, you want to let off some steam, fine, go play a game. But there are so many other better creative things to do with your time, honestly. But whatever, that, no judgment. You do whatever you want. You know what I mean? I'm not here to tell you, how to spend your leisure time or whatever. uh but it's a nightmare world we're living in. It honestly is.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're talking about the cyber hell and everything like that, and you
It
know,
is a cyber hell. We are we are
I
living in a cyber hell.
I've done probably 50 hours of podcast talk content talking about hyper reality and the nature of the technosphere and like all of this kind of stuff. I've probably more than that. I've talked about it at length. However, when I think of a game, like for example, one of my favorite games of all time is Final Fantasy VII. I absolutely adored this game, right? The music is magnificent. It's the story writing is brilliant. It is such a good game that when I first played it, and you guys are going to make fun of me, but I'm just going to say it, mask off. The scene where Sephiroth comes down and stabs Eris, like in that scene, I cried the first time. I was a kid. I was like 12 when I played
Oh,
it.
no judgment. No
You know,
judgment. Yeah.
yeah. Well, these guys are gonna break my balls about it. I know it.
No,
But
no. I bet you that there's tons of people who cried over even more mundane things. There is no shame in masculine tears.
But it was such a beautiful story and such a great game that at one point it made me tear up. And this
Yeah.
is like, how is that still okay? So if we look at it as, because I know the argument against video games being art, effectively from a lot of people. Now you go even further, but for some other critics out there, they argue that video games can't be art because it's interactive. So
Right.
would there
Yeah.
be a distinction between games that are purely interactive, like Call of Duty? I would, for example, a game like Call of Duty, I would say there's art in Call of Duty. Like, for example, I mean, the guy that makes the models, the guy that makes the
Yeah.
landscapes, that guy is an artist.
Right. The models are art, but as soon as you start moving that camera around, you start going around the mall, it's interactive. It's not art anymore. It's science. And again, this is not to shame video games. This is not even to shame really science. Really, I know I say I'm
You
against
can
all the
change
science
signs.
stuff. You know what I mean? Like, the thing is that we need to start honoring the spirit of sport, the spirit of science, the spirit of philosophy. Let us, really honor them and do them justice the way that they really should be. But the problem is that today we are replacing science and putting it over we are smearing science all over everything. Science is like this miracle uh, of modern man that is sapping away the magic, sapping away the meaning, sapping away everything. And that's the point, is that it's art. Art is an experience. It is a mode, right? And today we are living in a very material, cyber, techno world. It is a matrix, and people's experiences, like your experience with Final Fantasy VII, is valid. That was an emotional experience. That made you feel something. That's great. Wonderful. I love it. But it's not art.
All right, Mr. Matt, we are well over an hour and a half. We got to wind it down here. But yeah, I loved having you on. I love this discussion. You are a very interesting, passionate guy, and I enjoy your takes, even if I don't agree with them. And I just love having you on. I also like your books too. I made it some way through the Fiendenfeld Castle, and my wife
Oh.
loved it. So my wife's on it now. So your books are great, guys. You go over. Matt, tell them where they can get your books.
Sure, yeah. So anybody who's read my DMR articles probably is familiar with the fact that I always like to share my Book Baby author page. So anybody who wants to buy my self-published work can find 3 charming little nightmarish books. The Report of Mr. Charles Almers and Other Stories, Fiendicfield Castle, Midnight's Eternal Prisoner, Waiting for the Summer, by Matthew Pungitore on Book Baby, the Book Baby Bookshop. I've also got stories in Cursova magazine. My story is in winter of 2021, Witchhurst Tower. I've also got a wonderful, I'm very proud of this story, The Tale of Marius, the Avenging Imp, another gothic decadent work by me in the new DMR anthology, the anthology of Halloween, Sam Hain's Sorceries by DMR. Look for me, look for Matthew Pungitore, The Tale of Marius, the Avenging Imp. And also, for all the Cursova fans, 2023 Cursova Fall should be seeing my decadent story, To a Dead Soul in Morbid Love.
Great title. Great title. Awesome
Thank
stuff.
you.
All right, Mr. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you for tuning in and listening to our discussion/debate. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. But like always, if you're in the mood for some based, weird fiction, make sure to go over to thebizarchives.com. I told you guys, I told you that the Bizarre Archives is growing. We're expanding. We're getting bigger. We're getting more powerful. We are chasing our destiny, stomping into the institutions, breaching the gates, leaping over the walls, and hurtling in to steal back our beloved literary traditions by force. Jihad. We're doing it. We're growing. And I told you we're working to get off Amazon so you guys can buy the books directly off our website, where your boy Big Dave just put it in today. It's going to be on the website. It's not available yet. We don't have enough inventory to go up yet, but help us get there by going to thebizarrearchives.com, follow the Amazon links, and buy some books. We got a few days left on our sale. All books, $10 and under. Bizarre Archives 1, Bizarre Archives 2, 3. We got Chronicles of Heraldria, Sacred Times Part 1. If you love epic fantasy, if you love cosmic horror, we got the cosmic horror double feature, Molybdus Articulate. We've got Shanghai horror, some detective noir. We got classics, Man in the 25th Century, the first 2 stories for Buck Rogers, The Willows from Algernon Blackwood. We got so much great stuff, and we got so much great stuff coming your guys' way. We got Spooky Month coming up. We're going to try to drop 4 books for the whole month. We're going nuts. We're going to work our balls off. We got great books coming your guys' way. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarre Archives. And if you want some exclusive access to free ebooks, go over to sign up on the Substack at theobelisk.substack.com and sign up. $5 a month, only $5, or $50 for just the whole entire year. Free ebooks every single month. It's totally worth it. It'll pay for itself in like the first 2 months. Go check it out. Great articles over there by Arbogast, Pulp Archivist, and many, many others. So we got great stuff coming your guys' way, but I appreciate all you guys. And stick around for a couple more minutes. We got some awesome advertisement videos to show off some of our cool books. And I'll see you guys on Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bizarre Cast. We're going to talk about, we got some more authors so we're going to shine a light on. We got lots of more stuff coming your guys' way. We got an episode coming up. We're going to talk about Clark Ashton Smith. And also, if you like this podcast, you like Bizarre Cast, make sure to go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go get Culture Dads. Me and Mike, 2 based publishing dads from the indie scene that do deep dives into retro pop culture for folkish and dissident minds. Our last episode, we did classical music. The time before that, we did ancient language, Indo-European language. We did episode on The Godfather, did episode on Western animation, did episode of Ninja Scroll, heavy metal, all kinds of stuff, black metal. We've got crazy awesome episodes over there. Go check it out. Sign up, all this stuff. Great stuff coming your guys' way. But thank you so much to each and every one of you for tuning in, supporting us, and I'll see you guys next time. Hails and blessings.